Welcome. Today's episode is really talking about birds and how birds can help ourselves to do better continuous deployment. We're going to talk about Canary deployments. So, Elias, why the hell are we talking about birds today?
We aren't really going to talk about birds, but we're going to talk about a deployment strategy inspired by the canaries in the mines. Canary deployments give you a safe and reliable way to gradually deploy changes to a small subset of users of the new versions. And like the birds, they let you catch potential issues early.
And we are going to do that with some live coding, some AWS tools that we regularly use for that. And we're going to help you understand how you can get this into your day-to-day life. And with that, before we kind of get going, people that regularly watch my channel will see that I have a new background. So I decided as I go into recording with this new background that everyone that gets on my show will need to help me decide something, because there's a lot of white in the back, right? And I have a very large collection of stickers, and I wanted to start putting some stickers over there. So Elias, you get the first choice to put a sticker on. I have a few, and I'm gonna bring 3 up, and you can choose which one you believe. Well, no, I'm gonna give you 5 or 4, whatever, and then you can decide which one we're gonna put on. So this is the first one. Oh, this is not really good. It's a Code Catalyst sticker, of course. Then I have this one from last reInvent, I think, certification sticker. Then I have this one from Maria, which is very important for me. And then last but not least, I have a sticker from the pre-invent hike in 2022. So which one should we put on first?
As a fellow AWS community builder, I would say that I love the AWS community.
Cool, thank you so much. So this one it is. I will not put that on now because it will not look good, but I will at least put it up there so we get that into the video. And with that, we are jumping straight into Canary deployments and how do we actually do that. Before we go into sharing your screen, I think initially we had said we're going to use SST v3 using Ion as a sample for this, because we wanted to try out some new technologies and some new stuff as well in this session. Now we pivoted away from that. Can you maybe elaborate a bit why?
Yeah, sure. This started with me writing a blog post about how to do Canary deployments with SST v2. But since Ion is now generally available, I didn't really want to make something about v2, which is going away. And v2 used CDK under the hood, but v3 instead uses a mix of Pulumi and Terraform, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't really get Canary deployments working as easily as with CloudFormation, because CDK uses CloudFormation behind the scenes, and CloudFormation and CodeDeploy has a native integration which enables this workflow, which we will see later.
Cool. Okay, so that's the reason for that. But thank you so much for spending time analyzing and thinking about how do we actually present this topic. So we're falling back to CDK and CloudFormation because of that.
Yes.
Now, Elias, you and I met in the Community Builders group, kind of. That's how we also saw your blog post, if I remember correctly. Now, not a lot of people might know who you are. Maybe you can give some introduction about yourself and what you do in your day-to-day job at the current stage at Elva.
Yeah, sure. My name is Elias and as I said, I'm an AWS community builder. And I'm also a co-founder of Elva Malmö, a consultancy in Sweden, which specializes in helping customers leverage AWS and serverless. So we help customers understand that going serverless first can lessen their operational burdens and focus on delivering business value faster.
That's great, and thank you so much for that intro. And with that, let's go technical. Where do we start? What do we have ready to look at today? And how do we get something to use Canary deployments at all?
Yeah, where do we want to start looking at code directly? Or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you want to drive this? I think yes, code is always the cool piece. This is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's good. I can find it. Okay, so I have prepared a GitHub repository, which should be public. So if you want to look at how this is set up after you watch the video, feel free to go to it. In its current state, there's only a skeleton project created by CDK init. But to this, we are going to add a really simple GitHub Actions workflow to deploy the application. And after we have done that, we are going to add Canary deployments and see how it works, basically.
Cool. Then let's get going.
So
you're driving us into Visual Studio Code, I guess.
Yes, I am. And I think first, since you like to focus a lot on cicd, so let's start with the workflow.
Yeah, I always tell people start with the workflow instead of doing it later, but let's build that one first.
Yes. So we're gonna create a really basic workflow. We basically want to check out the code, install things we need like Node, get some AWS credentials, and just run CDK deploy. So let's name this deploy, and we want to trigger this on every push to the main branch. We're adding some permissions to the workflow. This is needed for the AWS credentials OIDC setup. And another thing that's good when you're working with CloudFormation and things is to add a concurrency control, because if you have a CloudFormation update in progress and you try to update it again, it will not be very happy. So we can add a workflow scoped concurrency called deploy. So now, what do we need to do? We need to check out the repository.
And are you using Q or Copilot?
I'm not sure which one is active right now. Copilot, perhaps. I've been switching between the two quite some time.
Okay.
So we are checking out the. Let's turn it off for. So we checked out the repository. Then we're gonna use an action called configure AWS credentials to get assume a role that I have stored as a secret in the repository. So yeah, best practice we're working with CICD is to not use long-lived IAM credentials, but rather assume a role that's only valid for the duration of the workflow. Then we're gonna install Node, because this is a TypeScript-based project. And we need to install some dependencies. And finally, deploy it. Let's just make sure that we don't get stuck waiting for approval in the pipeline. So let's push this and see what's happened.
And this now uses just CDK to deploy a CDK app, which at the moment is just a Lambda function, right? Or
yeah,
what is it?
We can, while this is pushing, we can just take a look at the basic stack we have. So this is just has a Lambda function connected behind an HTTP API gateway. It has a single route /hello that's routed to the function. And the function itself only returns hello.
Hello.
and logs the
Good.
incoming event. So a really
pretty basic
really
stuff
basic,
so far.
Really basic application, and great way to showcase how the canaries work later. So, we have a failure.
And to be honest, I am not sure I can read that failure. I need to make it bigger somehow on my side.
Small typo, missing a dash or hyphen.
Which tools do you use on command line? GC, GA? Is that just aliases or?
It's seashell. No, my seashells aliases. I have been. It's used in seashell and then the my seashell plugin framework, and those are included out of the box. So I've been using them for 8 years or something.
Cool.
Push, of course. Always some demo ghosts, right?
Yeah, that's normal. That's the way it happens. It also shows how you learn or how you react to failures, which is always a good learning for anyone watching as well. So that's why I personally like live coding as well a lot, because that's stuff that you don't talk about at the end, right? I had a typo having 2 dashes or less or whatever, right? And that's something you don't see if you don't do that live at the end.
Don't have turned on off Copilot. Maybe it would have written the correct.
Most probably, yeah. I still don't use any Gen AI in my coding, to be honest. I don't have any active subscription, and I don't have any active companion that helps me here, if I'm honest.
I've been using it quite a lot. I think it helps with certain parts, and in some ways it's in a way it's a fine line.
Yeah, true.
But here we can see that we have assumed a role in AWS. We've installed our dependencies and finally deployed the stack.
Okay.
And we have prepared a URL here. So this will be useful to see the current state of the API. Not sure if you can see it.
I can.
Great. So we can see here that every request returns hello. So let's switch this up to and since we are not using any canaries right now, this should be instant.
It should directly affect us, right? So the moment,
as soon as the workflow is complete, it should start showing hello there instead. We can see.
By the way, I love it that we're not doing that from local, because a lot of devs do CDK watch and these kind of things. But I personally always advocate for any deployment that you do should go through version control, right?
Yep.
So that's what I'm always try to achieve at the end, right? And I don't know how much you have spent time in looking at project scaffolding and these kind of things. With custom blueprints, you usually get such simple workflows in Code Catalyst. And I think that we need more things like that make it easier, right? So, and now we see hello there. Great. So that deployment actually works.
Yeah, deployment works, and it shifts 100% of traffic instantly. And as we said earlier, this if the testing wasn't good enough, I have not a single test here, so we know it's not good enough. If we introduced a bug or something, we would affect 100% of the customers. And perhaps we want to limit the blast radius by using Canary deployments.
Yay, and that's what we want to change here now at the end, right? We want to ensure that that goes only out to a certain portion
Yes.
of the Lambda traffic.
And Canary deployments are made with co-deploy in AWS, which has a native integration towards both Lambda for deploying and CloudFormation, as we will see.
Cool. Then before we go into that, let's finish the story with the birds that we started off with, Elias. I think the naming really comes from people going into mines having the canaries on the bottom, kind of, right?
Yeah, I think so too. They had canary birds with them down in the mines, and they would pass out from toxic gases before the levels of the gas was high enough to affect humans. So it was like an early warning. If the bird passed out, it was time to evacuate.
Yeah, and that's what we also try to do here, right? If we find out that the change is not going well, or is not fulfilling tests, or is not in line with some of the specifications, right, then we could potentially stop the rollout of our application using this Canary deployment strategy. And that's essentially also what we aim to implement now.
Yeah.
So does this start in changing the workflow, or does this start in getting into the console and setting something up there? What's your approach?
We will only update the CDK contents here, so we won't change the workflow. That's where the native integration with CloudFormation comes in. It handles it for us behind the scenes.
Cool. Then let's go.
Let's go. All right. So the first thing we need is a Lambda alias. And for you who don't know what a Lambda alias is, it's basically a pointer to a specific Lambda version. So say that I have version 3 deployed now, I can have a Lambda alias that points to version 3. But there's also another thing with aliases that enables this traffic shifting, where you can have weighted traffic routing. So you can point 90% of traffic to version 3, which is our current version, and you can then point 10% to a new version. And that's really what co-deploys uses under the hood. And in CDK, to create an alias, it's more or less to just let's add an alias. Like that. And currently the API gateway points to the API functions. We need to switch that up to point to an alias instead.
Okay.
Then we need a co-deploy application, which is basically just a container to group different deployments together. If you have many deployment targets, never really understood those container concepts that AWS has, both in co-deploy, and app config also has the concept of an application. But let's add one.
So code deploy now being a service to manage your deployments. It has different possibilities at the end, right?
Yeah.
And also different deployment methods, I believe, are supported.
Yes, you can target Lambda functions, ECS containers, EC2 machines, even on-premise as servers, I think, if you add a co-deploy agent to them.
Yep, and I think worth pointing out here is that the object Lambda application that we're using here is an L2 construct written by the CDK team, part of the code deploy stack, right? So it's an application that inherits a code deploy application, if I saw that correctly a little bit earlier, right?
And we have the import up here from SAP, or if it's even an L3 construct, then maybe. I don't know.
I would say that's an L2, but I don't care about that much. I think the more important piece is that someone has done the work to make this accessible and simple for us. I think that's the important piece here.
Yes. We could, if we want later, take a look at the generated CloudFormation to just see what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Yay.
Okay, we have an application, and we need a deployment group. And the deployment group for Lambda functions then connects an alias with a deployment strategy. And that deployment strategy can take two different versions.
Okay.
Let's see. So we need to pass in the deploy application. We need the alias, and then we have something called deployment config. And here there are quite a few built-in ones.
Okay.
So you can either use, we're talking about canaries today. So there's obviously the canary strategy where you send X% of traffic to the new version for some minutes, maybe 5. And then after those 5 minutes, you send the rest of the traffic. But there's also a linear deployment strategy where you shift traffic in equal increments. So perhaps you move 10% of traffic every 1 minute. So you have 10%, 20%, 30%, and so on.
Can I go smaller than 5 minutes?
I think you can go down to 1 minute. But then you can run into problems with if you have alarms and automatic rollbacks, because the resolution of the metrics and alarms don't get a chance to be able to trigger and roll back.
Okay, makes sense. So then let's stick to the 5 minutes and see.
And here's something that we will look at later, but just add in an empty array for alarms. And let's deploy this first without.
So Canary 10%, 5 minutes means it's going to first change 10%, and after 5 minutes, 100% of the traffic will be shifted to the new live version of the Lambda function. Just ensuring that I understood correctly what we're implementing here.
Yeah, that's correct. And now I'm just pushing this up before we're switching the. So we have.
Now, what's your idea on giving me the possibility to ensure that I hit that new version if I want to test something manually? Is there a strategy for that?
Not out of the box, I don't think so. Then I think you need to do some additional routing in the API gateway to target a specific version, because right now it targets the alias, and you can't really pick if you hit A or B, so to speak, with alias.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So out of the box, this doesn't really support user segmenting or so. If you want to deploy traffic to only like a beta group and not the full user base, because this is doing on a round robin strategy.
Makes sense.
Let's quickly go to GitHub and see how. That one is complete. So now what do you want to say?
I don't know. Halloween, but it's too early, right? So then let's say hello summer.
Hello summer.
I hope that we get some here in Germany. We had 3 days already. That was a lot now. Actually, it's too cold. It's raining outside.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of rain and stuff here in Sweden as well. All right.
So now in the deployment already finished, right? The current one. So that means we now have in the console, we have that alias set up. We have the API gateway pointing to that alias, and we should also now have a code deploy application.
Yes, right? We should have a code deploy application here, which have a deployment group.
The deployment group points at the Lambda function somewhere.
Yeah, I think I'm not exactly sure how that's shown in the console. I'm not usually in the.
Well, we have the application up there. There is the application, I think. Oh, and
I think it's when you actually do deploy it, it compiles a YAML or what it's called, which points to the alias in turn. But we can see here that we have no deployments yet. So let's push up hello summer and see what happens.
But we should in the console already see that there is an alias for the Lambda function, right? And that the API...
see that. And we can see that it currently has 100% weight to version 8. And this should change as soon as the deploy is going through.
Okay. I think Hello Summer is a very cool commit message as well.
Yeah.
We should use that more regularly. And now we're expecting to see 10% of the traffic showing Hello Summer. And how again are you running the API calls on the right-hand side?
This is just a little fetch in a loop.
Oh, there's Hello Summer.
Yeah.
I just saw it on the right-hand side. Yeah.
So it does 5 requests every second.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, we have a few Hello Summer here. And
yeah, let's have a look. Let's have a look in the console how this now looks. And sorry if this feels like Johannes is pushing you, rushing you somewhere.
No worries.
I think.
Yeah, but here we can see the alias for the Lambda function. We have 90% of traffic going to version 8 and 10% going to version 9. And we can see in CloudFormation that for the entire duration of this 5 minutes now deployment, the stack will be in update in progress status.
Okay.
So I guess that could be, if you want a longer period, it could really slow you down, I feel. If you put like 10% 30 minutes, that means, yeah, you can't deploy again for 30 minutes. Because the stack.
But I could abort this update now, which would then cause a rollback.
Yes, you could, if you terminate it here, I think in the CloudFormation console, do a cancel update.
Okay.
And if we take a look at the code deploy console, we can see that we have a deployment in progress, where we can see that it has shifted 10% of traffic.
Yeah. Here I think something, the dear code deploy team, it would be great to see how much time is left until the rest of the traffic is shifting here, right?
Yes, that would be very useful. Because, yeah, you see here 5 minutes, it was created 1 minute ago, or you can...
Yeah, but you need to calculate that in your head, and that's not always what you want. Especially if you create
a custom deployment configuration, it might not have a nice name like this.
That is true, yeah. So that would be helpful.
Another thing, when I tried some things out yesterday, I clicked stop deployment up here because I didn't want to wait 5 minutes, and it kind of broke the CloudFormation stack.
Oh, really? But over there on the right-hand side, you see it will take approximately 5 minutes after the deployment has started on the right-hand side. So traffic shifting process, there is 90% and 10%, and there is something, right? Yeah. But I would love to see a counter here that tells me how much is left.
Yeah, that would be great.
Especially for larger applications, I can see that that would be sensible and helpful, right? Now, if we want to integrate automated testing in this, you talked about alarms that we didn't create yet.
Yep.
There would also be the potential of triggering some kind of hooks or automated tests after the deployment started, I guess, right?
Yeah, you have hooks for before allow traffic and after allow traffic, where you can, I think you can point to another Lambda function that can do whatever you want basically, and if it returns an error, then it fails the deployment.
Okay.
And I think it guarantees that it goes. I haven't played around with that, but I'd assume it goes to the new version of the Lambda then, if you do that.
Okay, cool.
You can enter in the configuration. You can give it any kind of CloudWatch alarm, so the alarm itself doesn't have to be bound to the function or anything.
And then you can have an alarm that you kind of update based on the test results, which would then fail. So do we want to showcase that part as well?
Maybe, but we can show the first the actual having an alarm if we, for example, have a lot of Lambda errors or something.
Yeah, let's prepare that while we're waiting those 5 minutes.
Let's do that. So in that case, we need an alarm. And I know there's an open issue on CDK that the like helpers metric errors which you have on functions doesn't really work on aliases.
Okay.
They give you the wrong dimensions, so we will have to do some custom stuff here. I'm just gonna copy this another place. So what we have here is an alarm. We give it a hard-coded alarm name for the reason that we want to create a unique alarm per Lambda version.
Okay.
Because if we didn't do that, if we let CDK create the name, it would not recreate the alarm. And
of course,
and the alarm,
it would keep it, and we needed to point to a different alias version after. Okay, got it.
And even if because we changed the underlying metric, but it doesn't reset the state of the alarm. So if you, from a previous deploy, like you had an alarm, so it rolled back, and then that alarm is still in alarm state, and you try to deploy again, it will immediately roll back, even if you have fixed the issue. So by hard coding a name here that's unique to the version, we get around that problem.
Okay.
And then we set up the metric dimensions to point to the correct version metric in CloudWatch. Here I would have hoped that I could just do something like alias.metric errors, but sadly there's a bug that's been open since 2019 or 2021.
CDK is open source, feel free to fix it.
Yeah, there was some PR that were supposed to fix it, but it got closed for some reason.
Oh gosh, okay.
But yeah, so we have an alarm, and by the way, it looks like our deploy has gone through. Now,
yay, 5 minutes are over.
Hello, summer. So we have an alarm. Let's just deploy it.
Just now, 1 second. Before you push.
Yes.
The alarm will never fire off yet because we haven't added any errors, right?
No. So this uses the built-in Lambda error metric for Lambda errors. So if we deploy this, it should just be in.
Yeah, then let's add an error. Let's go to the function and say something like every 3 times throw an exception.
Or just every time, just to see.
No, that's not. No, that's boring. Let's do something like, we can do something like if counter modulo 5 equals or something like that. Yeah, random is fine.
What is it, rand int? No?
I don't know. But you can do if math random is smaller than 0.8.
Oh.
Then we want to throw that error. then we get 80% of the lambda functions should fail.
Yes.
That roughly.
All right. Let's try it out.
Now, if you and I would be lambda experts, we would now know if the same lambda container would now use the same random yes or no. I guess it wouldn't, because the seed should be changing, but would be an interesting conversation.
Yes.
So you know what I'm trying to say, right? If you use that, I know that from a Java perspective, and I know we are not using Java here, but if you use Java lambda functions and you have that lambda Snapchat activated, which gives you faster cold starts, then essentially this function that we just did wouldn't work as expected, because the seed would be the same for all of the lambda functions, right?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how it works for Node, actually. We'll see, I guess.
Yeah, let's
Either
see.
we get all hello winter or
Okay,
all
so
errors.
yeah, now we do have the deployment running already. So that means
We had
CloudWatch.
2 internal
Did we push?
servers.
Oh yeah,
Not
that was fast. But does that mean that deployment would now already stop directly when there is an error?
Yeah, but it, as CloudWatch, can usually take some time to get them, or CloudWatch takes a while to get the lambda metrics in. I think they get in like every 60 seconds.
Okay. Insufficient data.
Yes,
what the hell?
But we can see here that we're looking at the AWS Lambda namespace for the metric called errors, and we're looking at the specific function named, or number 10.
Okay, then let's look at the deployment for a second, if we have that open somewhere.
This one?
Oh,
it has
already failed.
This is in alarm.
Okay, and that now resulted in co-deploy doing what?
Co-deploy then rolled back the alias change and triggered CloudFormation to do a entire rollback of the stack.
So that's essentially what we wanted to show, right?
And
that was a little bit faster than expected, but maybe we should have done the randomized factor less.
Yeah, but
80%.
And we do actually have a hello winter here. So it seems like it didn't see the same every invocation at least. Or I'm hitting multiple.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's what we wanted at the end. We have some more hello winter over there. So we saw that the new version got live and not everything caused an error. Now, the number of errors that we had was only bigger than 1, right? I think that caused the deployment to fail directly. Maybe we could have done that a little bit later. But let's go to the deployment again to see how we would be seeing that as well. Just because we've skipped over it pretty quickly. So we see the deployment failed. We see hopefully somewhere also the alarm.
Yeah,
no,
we can
don't
see that
the alarm.
There's
the alarm, but there is no link in it. So, dear co-deploy team, please add the link to the alarm if there is a failure.
Yes, that's
but I think this is pretty good.
And we can see in GitHub Actions that the deployment has failed.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, it even gives you the deployment information that failed. Cool, Elias. What else technically did we want to show?
I'm not sure.
I think we're done with at least what we had talked about. But do you have any surprises for me of stuff that you had prepared that you would like to bring up?
No, I don't. That's the great thing with Canary deployments. They're quite simple to add.
Yeah, but not a lot of people do that.
No,
so maybe let's stop sharing and let's try to talk a little bit about how often do you use Canary deployments in your day-to-day job at Elva?
Not as often as I should. I can be
What's
honest
the reason
with that.
for that?
I don't know, it often gets overlooked myself as well. You're always on this quest for bringing out features or whatnot. That because adding it in, it's not that hard actually.
That is true. But I think just adding Canary deployments doesn't help, right? You need to have all of that glue around the Canary deployments that actually make the Canary deployment valuable. So you need to add some testing, you need to add some more validations, and you need to rethink about the alarms that you actually create.
Yeah, but even if you don't have it based on testing, just increased error rates or increased latency on, because you can put metrics from like the API gateway as alarms for the lambdas as well, or for the deployment. So if you suddenly see a spike in latencies, you might want to roll back that latest change. So even if you don't do this pre-validation, I think it's still valuable to just have it on errors or latencies.
Yeah, and I think I agree. And to be honest, I haven't used that much Canary deployments yet lately either, right? We always do blue-green if I need to do something. But Canary hasn't been part of my heart, especially because a lot of the stuff that I do is not serverless, right? And I think especially if you have fast, quick deployments like Lambda functions, it makes sense to do Canary deployments and use them a little bit more. Elias, where can people find more about you and about what you do on a regular basis? And how can they get in touch if they have follow-up questions and maybe want to get you as the person that implements Canary deployments for them now?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to find me is LinkedIn. Elias Bange on there. Or my blog, which is eliasbange.dev, where there's also links to LinkedIn and other, where I try to share some of my knowledge and experiences regarding serverless development on AWS.
Cool. Thank you. I will share that and add that to the show notes once we publish this episode. And with that, Elias, thank you so much for taking the time, for preparing this session, for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. I think this is pretty helpful. So if you're building serverless applications, and if you're using CDK, and if you're not yet using Canary deployments, think about it. Get this integrated. It is pretty simple, and it gives you at least some possibility to not ensure that you directly switch all of your traffic to something that doesn't work.
Yes.
Have a great rest of your day, Elias. And talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.